so much. I'll give a bit of an intro, then turn it over to my colleague, Nicole Olenek. We'll go through a presentation and really look forward to your questions. And just thanks to start off, just thank you for taking time out of your busy day. I know folks are busy, and I appreciate you, taking the time to participate in this process, and specifically today. It's a real contribution to the process and is really helping us, refine this plan as we come down to the final steps. Big picture, as most of you, and I can see some of the names on the call, and so the folks who are on the call will be aware. We're building on the vision as part of this process that's already outlined in the 2018 official community plan. And the district is undertaking a planning and community engagement process to create really detailed policy for a new compact, sustainable urban community in Cypress Village. And it also protects a large portion of the Eagleridge lands in perpetuity for conservation and recreation. And right now, we're in phase 3, which is the final phase of the planning the upper lands process. As we've gone through the process and given the high level of interest from the community and stakeholders in planning for Cypress Village and Eagleridge, prior to the introduction of bylaws and the public hearing process, which we hope to do soon, before it's presented as part of a package for bylaws for council, we're providing this additional opportunity for community and stakeholder engagement. The purpose of the phase 3 engagement, including this virtual event, is to allow the community and stakeholders to review the area development plan, ask questions, and provide comments before we present it as a part of a package of bylaws for council's consideration. So that's where we're at. Look forward to the presentation. I look forward to your questions. Nicole, I'll turn it over to you. I'll mute myself and then we'll unmute and look forward to responding in about 20 minutes.
Sounds perfect. Thanks, Jim. And thanks, Christina. I'm just going to share my screen. It's very small. There we go. And get that to full size. Everyone can see that it's up?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So as Jim mentioned, thank you all for attending today for this virtual and permitted planning and engagement process called Planning the Upper Lands, creating a sustainable urban community in Cypress Village and protecting lands in Eagleridge. In our presentation, I will go over a bit of background about the policy context and the goals for this planning and engagement process. Some information about the focus of this phase, which is phase 3, the third and final phase of the work. Highlights from the draft area development plan for Cypress Village and Eagleridge, and some information about next steps. So starting with the policy context, there are 4 remaining planning areas in the upper lands. So these are shown on the map on the screen: Eagleridge, Intercreek, Cypress West, and Cypress Village. The long-term vision that's already contained in the OCP is to protect the lands in Eagleridge and Intercreek in their natural state for recreation and conservation, and to create new communities that are compact and sustainable in Cypress Village and Cypress West. This vision builds on a fairly long policy context history, including some work that was done in 2015 by the Upper Lands Working Group, which was really insightful and looked at all of these remaining areas in a very holistic way. So the OCP recommends achieving this long-term vision by transferring the development rights from all of Eagleridge and Intercreek into Cypress Village and Cypress West. Most of the lands in these 4 planning areas are owned by British Pacific Properties, or BPP, and they're currently zoned for single-family. They have single-family zoning, which allows large houses on large lots. Transferring the development rights from Eagleridge and Intercreek really means that those areas could no longer be developed with single-family housing under the existing zoning or any form of development. Those lands would be retained for recreation and conservation, and then additional residential development would be included in new neighborhoods in Cypress Village and Cypress West. This policy in the OCP is aiming to protect a very large natural area, to help limit suburban sprawl, and to concentrate development in a more compact and sustainable way in the community. So our current planning process focuses on 2 of these 4 areas, Eagleridge and Cypress Village, and the planning for Intercreek and Cypress West will happen in a future process, likely around the time when Cypress Village is nearing being built out. There are two overarching and dual goals for our process. So the first is to protect the lands in Eagleridge that are currently owned by BPP for conservation and recreation. BPP's lands are shown in this cross-hatched or lined shading. And that will be achieved by having BPP transfer ownership of those lands to the district and the lands being dedicated as park. In the rest of Eagleridge, there is already existing park, White Lake Park and part of Nelson Canyon Park. So then all of the planning area will essentially become park. And then the second goal is creating a compact and sustainable community in Cypress Village with a mix of transit, a mix of housing, community facilities and amenities, shops and businesses to help serve residents in Cypress Village, in Rogers Creek, and also other nearby areas in the upper lands. This slide shows our overall process. Our process has 3 phases and it's been underway for about 2 years now. So phase 1 was completed during July to December 2020, and that focused on communicating the goals and the vision already contained in the OCP and collecting community input about the share of the Eagleridge lands owned by BPP to be protected at this time, when the trade-off being that the greater the share, the greater the scale of development required in Cypress Village to help enable that protection. During phase 1, the community and stakeholder response favored protecting all of the lands in Eagleridge that are owned by BPP rather than in a phased approach, and planning for a scale of development in Cypress Village that would help enable that protection. And at the end of phase 1, council directed that the phase 2 planning work proceed on the basis of full protection of Eagleridge. So we took that direction and moved into phase 2, which was completed during March to November 2021. And in phase 2, we presented a proposed land use concept and development concept for Cypress Village, which was consistent with that direction from phase 1. In phase 2, there was also community and stakeholder support for what we proposed in terms of the land use plan and the development concept. So now we're in phase 3, which is the final phase. Phase 3 involves documenting the plan and the bylaws. And so those will include an area development plan for Cypress Village and Eagleridge, new site-specific comprehensive development district zoning for Cypress Village, a phase development agreement between the district and BPP, and some supporting bylaws. As a first step in phase 3, we've published a draft area development plan for Cypress Village and Eagleridge on the project webpage. And we're providing an opportunity for the community and stakeholders to review that draft plan and ask questions before it's presented as part of a package of bylaws for consideration by council. And then following this additional phase 3 engagement that we're currently underway, we'll be putting together a full package of bylaws and presenting them to council for consideration of formal adoption. So in terms of the phase 3 materials, we've posted a series of new documents on the project webpage, and those are listed here. So a draft area development plan for Cypress Village and Eagleridge, a document that summarizes where we're at in the process and the different timelines that I just outlined, an overview of what we heard in phases 1 and 2 and how that's helped to shape the draft plan, document that gives answers to anticipated questions. We called that the phase 3 FAQs, and some summary information about traffic, which was one of the main concerns we heard in previous phases. So we've addressed that with a document dedicated to that. The draft area development plan is really the main document, and it's about 160 pages. It includes background information and context information, and then also the forward-thinking policies and the detailed plan for both protecting the lands in Eagleridge and for guiding development and the implementation strategy for Cypress Village. I'll walk through some highlights of the draft plan, but for those who are interested, we encourage and welcome you to visit our project webpage and review the documents in even more detail and the information that's posted online to learn more. So for some highlights of the plan, this first image shows that the intention is that the entire Eagleridge planning area, including the lands owned by BPP right now, which are those, they're shaded green to indicate that those will be retained in it as natural lands. And then also the intention to retain a large portion of the Cypress Village planning area in a natural state as well and concentrate development in pods. These couple images on the left here are some images of the lands in Eagleridge. And then in this aerial image on the right, the lands that are currently owned by BPP are shaded orange, and they're adjacent to White Lake Park and Nelson Canyon Park, as I mentioned, within the Eagleridge planning boundary. Eagleridge is pretty special. It includes trails, a lake, wetlands, creeks, and stands of old growth forests. So we really see this as an opportunity to protect a large natural area that's environmentally and ecologically important, both to West Vancouver residents and also to the region. Down in the notes here, you can see that BPP's lands in Eagleridge currently total about 262 acres. So as a comparable, Lighthouse Park is 190 acres. And when those lands that are owned by BPP are transferred to the district and dedicated park, that will really create a large contiguous area of district-owned parkland, which will be about 800 acres, and that's on par with Stanley Park, which is about 1,000 acres. This table shows the proposed size of the community and housing mix for Cypress Village. So Cypress Village will include about 3,700 units, 3,711 to be precise. And this size of community helps to enable the protection of the lands in Eagleridge that are owned by BPP. And it's also a size of community that means the village will be large enough to support a vibrant commercial core with amenities and transit service, and that it can have a mix of housing. Almost all of the housing is multifamily, and that will help to achieve a compact, sustainable community. And there's a mix of affordable rental, market rental, and strata apartment units. The goal is to help provide a more diverse and affordable mix of housing in West Vancouver, and to help provide options for seniors to downsize within the community, or adult children to stay close to their families, or young families to move into the community. Down here, you'll see that with about 3,700 housing units, we anticipate that the village will have about 6,900 people living in it at build out. That's in about 20 to 25 years. Growth will probably average about 275 people per year on average, but it'll start out a bit slower and gain some momentum. We anticipate that about 200 to 300 people will live in the village by the end of 2025. And about 1,600 to 1,800 people will live in the village by about 2030. And then that build out population of 6,900 people could be reached in and around 2045. This image is the land use plan for Cypress Village when it's fully developed in about 20 to 25 years. So there's 5 main elements. The first is shown here in red, which is, and number 1, which is the mixed use village core. Buildings in this area will mostly be multifamily above commercial at grade. And so the commercial at grade can include uses like restaurants, shops, and services of businesses like that. The second area is this orange shaded area marked 2, which is a multifamily housing area, and that's concentrated along Eagle Lake Road, which will be the main arterial in the village. And the intention is to concentrate a large share of the additional housing near the village core to help support walking and cycling for daily errand trips. And the plan also allows for a small amount of retail, things like maybe a corner cafe in that multifamily area as well. And then the third area is shaded yellow, and that's the ground-oriented housing areas that you see in these locations. Those will include small single-family houses, duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, townhouses, ground-oriented housing, essentially. And then there's also number 4 is the employment areas. So there are some existing employment uses that will remain, like the school district's works yard site, the BC Hydro substation site, and the district's works yard site. And then one of the new road connections is this road you can see following my cursor here, which is called Westmount Connector. That will be built as part of the development. And in doing so, it creates the opportunity to add some employment uses in this blue shaded area, which we call the benchlands. And that's envisioned to be business park type uses. So things like office, light manufacturing, craft breweries, things that would be compatible with the location near the mixed use village. And then finally, there's a concentration of community facilities. So a field, a school, and a community center located on the site that's known as McGavin Field. And then also a fire hall located on the district's works yard site. This is the recreation areas plan for Cypress Village. There's a lot of images and details in the draft plan about the planned pedestrian network, cycling network, the parks and open spaces plan, the trails network plan, the mountain biking area, which is this crosshatch shading area here, which is about 50 acres being dedicated to authorized mountain biking in Cypress Village, and then also bouldering areas, which are the orange line shaded areas here. Those are existing uses that are currently unsanctioned, but that will be authorized and formalized over time as Cypress Village is being built. The plan provides for some benefits that we would consider benefits for the broader community. So things like protecting the lands in Eagleridge, providing a more diverse and affordable mix of housing in West Vancouver, creating a new vibrant location, kind of a destination for West Vancouver residents within the community, and providing a more diversified tax base for the municipality with the inclusion of that business park type employment space. But in addition to those sort of broader benefits, the village will include more locally serving community amenities and facilities. So these include a fire station, a community center, childcare facilities, a site for an elementary school, and a sports field. One of the other elements being incorporated into the plan is that BPP will be required to provide independent transit service connecting Cypress Village to Park Royal, where there's bus service to other parts of the North Shore and the region. Including transit was one of the tools to help mitigate the impacts of the village on traffic. And one of the phase 3 documents, as I mentioned, that's posted on the project webpage includes a summary of information about traffic. That includes an overview of the findings of a traffic impact assessment, which was completed as part of the planning work, as well as some information about broader regional initiatives that are aimed at helping to address traffic congestion on the North Shore at a broader scale. The draft area development plan outlines the obligations for the district and for BPP in general terms. These will be defined in more detail in the phase development agreement, but the list is here, and these are also documented in the plan. So BPP will be obligated to pay for all on-site and off-site infrastructure to serve Cypress Village. It will fund and operate the independent transit service, develop the affordable housing, and pay DCCs and provide community amenities or financial contributions towards those. And they'll pay regional and local development cost charges. And then there is an allowance for BPP to have reduced DCC rates in Cypress Village, reflecting that they're supplying the local infrastructure that would typically be part of a DCC charge, and they're transferring ownership of the lands in Eagleridge, which would be considered a major park. And this list is of the district's obligations resulting from the area development plan. And so those are also outlined in general terms in the draft plan and will be detailed in the phase development agreement. But the district will be obligated to pay for any costs associated with upsizing servicing or amenities beyond what's needed for Cypress Village. So for example, if the draft plan includes a community center of about 24,000 square feet, that's on par with the size of the Glen Eagles Community Center. So if the district elected to build a larger community center or a more elaborate community center, then it would be obliged to pay for that incremental capital cost. The district will also be obligated to contribute funds which are on hand from some existing DCC reserves and CAC reserves towards purposes for which the funds were collected. The district will have to make some consequential upgrades or changes to some uses that exist in the planning area. So for example, there is an existing fire training grounds that's on the eastern end of the works yard site, and that's where the new fire station will go. And so there'll be some work to reconfigure the fire training grounds and the works yard site to accommodate that new fire station. The district will own, operate, and maintain the fire station, community center, childcare spaces, roads and active transportation network, and the parks and open spaces as those get built and transferred to the district over time. And the district will transfer some district-owned vacant parcels or portions of them in Cypress Village to BPP, and those will form part of development parcels or in some cases, a part of road areas. The draft plan includes a series of plans and artist illustrations to help convey how the village could look as it gets developed over time. So this first image is an aerial concept plan image of the village upon build out. So this is the Cypress Bowl location of Cypress Bowl Road. These are the lower density ground oriented housing areas that you saw in those yellow shaded areas in the draft or in the land use plan. This is the employment space, the field, community center or school, community center, fire hall, and then the mixed use village here with the multifamily area along Eagle Lake Road. This next image is an artist illustration to help communicate what the village could look like in about 20 to 25 years when it's fully developed. And then in the next few slides, I'll click through them and it's kind of stop motion, but I'll click through them and it shows in 5-year increments how the village will develop in sort of an east to west progression over time. So this is the village at year 5, year 10, year 15, year 20, and 25 years. The next few slides have a couple images of some places in the village to just give a sense of what it could feel like. So these are some images that are in illustrative of the mixed use core area. This image helps to illustrate open space, plazas, and a strong public realm. The ground oriented housing areas, and this is Eagle Lake Road with that multifamily area along there. This image is an idea of what the benchlands employment space could look like. And this image just helps to show the village set in its natural setting. So as I mentioned earlier, the draft plan is available on the project webpage, and the address for that or what the webpage is shown here. And there's an online question form open until 4 p.m. this Friday, but of course you can ask us questions today or you can submit them by email, and our email address is also shown here on the screen. And then following the phase 3 engagement, the next step will be to present the full package of bylaws to council for formal consideration of adoption. So that's the slideshow. I'll stop sharing and then I will pass it back to Christina, who will help moderate the questions.